Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped that champagne glass. Marin was up there at the microphone, looking like an absolute dream in her ivory dress, those golden chandeliers making her glow like some kind of angel. And every single person in that packed ballroom was holding their breath. She'd already thanked her father, check, thanked her bridesmaids, check, even thanked the caterers, the florist, and yeah, even the DJ who'd been playing the same 5 songs on repeat during cocktail hour. But me, nothing. Not a word. And listen, I told myself it was fine. I told myself I didn't do any of this for recognition. But my chest felt like someone had scooped it out with a spoon anyway. Then Marin's voice did this thing where it just cracked. She looked right at me, and I mean right at me, with those green eyes all shiny with tears, and that microphone picked up every single shaky breath she was taking. "There's one more person," she whispered. And I swear to you, the entire room went dead silent. You could hear fabric rustling, someone's fork hitting a plate somewhere in the back. My husband Cyrus grabbed my hand under the table so tight I thought he might break my fingers. I had no idea what was coming. All I knew was my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon, and everyone could probably hear it. "Delphine," Marin said, and her voice completely shattered. She pressed her hand against her chest like she was physically trying to hold herself together. "You are my real mother." 5 words. That's it. 5 little words that somehow contained 14 years of my entire life. The room absolutely erupted. People gasped so loud it echoed off those high ceilings. Someone definitely dropped a fork. I heard it clatter. Whispers started flying. My vision went blurry with tears, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except watch as Marin stepped down from that stage and walked toward me, her veil trailing behind her like some kind of white waterfall. She knelt right there beside my chair, took both my hands in hers. "You raised me," she said, and now she was full on sobbing. "You loved me when no one else would. You paid for this wedding. You paid for my college. You showed up to every game, every recital, every broken heart. Mom left. You stayed." That word, stayed, hit me like someone had punched me in the stomach. Because yeah, it was true. I had stayed through every single tantrum, every sleepless night, every moment when this girl had screamed at me that I wasn't her real mother and never would be. I pulled her into my arms right there in front of 200 people, and I didn't care who was watching. Her wedding dress got all crumpled up against my lavender gown, and honestly, I didn't care about that either. She smelled like roses and hairspray and somehow still like that little girl I used to tuck into bed every night. "I love you. I have always loved you." And right then, in that exact moment, every single sacrifice I had ever made felt worth it. Every dollar we'd scraped together and spent, every tear I'd cried alone in my car, every time I'd bitten my tongue when her biological mother would call once a year and pretend to give a damn. This moment, this made it all make sense. So here's how this whole thing began. 14 years earlier, in a coffee shop in Portland, during one of those rainstorms that makes you question why anyone lives in the Pacific Northwest, this guy walks in, absolutely drenched, wrestling with an umbrella that had basically given up on life and turned itself inside out, and I laughed, like full on laughed so hard I almost wore my latte. He looked up at me with these warm brown eyes and just grinned. "Laugh all you want," he said. "This umbrella cost me $12." Which made me laugh even harder, honestly. I bought him a coffee to make up for being rude. We ended up talking for 3 hours straight. That's when he told me about his 6-year-old daughter. That's when he told me her mother had packed up and left them both. Now, any sane person would have heard that and run for the hills, right? I was 32, single, had never particularly wanted kids of my own. I liked my freedom. I liked sleeping in on weekends. I liked not having anyone snot on my clothes. But something about the way Cyrus's entire face softened when he talked about Marin made me curious. He pulled out his phone and showed me this photo of a little girl with wild curly hair everywhere, a gap-toothed grin that could light up a room, and paint smudges all over her cheeks. "She's an artist," he said, and you could hear the pride just dripping from his voice. "She paints everything, the walls, the furniture, sometimes the dog." I cracked up again. I had absolutely no idea I was falling in love with both of them right there in that coffee shop. Our first official date? The zoo. And Cyrus brought Marin along because apparently that's what you do when you're a single dad who doesn't trust babysitters. She showed up in this bright yellow raincoat and purple rain boots that didn't match at all. And she refused to hold my hand. Just clung to her dad's leg like a little koala bear the entire time. Every time I tried to talk to her, she'd turn her face away. "She's shy," Cyrus said, all apologetic. But I could see what it really was. It wasn't shyness. It was fear. Pure, raw fear that I would leave too, that I'd hurt her daddy, that I'd take him away from her somehow. So I didn't push it. I let Marin set the pace because that's what you're supposed to do with traumatized kids, right? I showed up to her school art show and stood way in the back where she couldn't see me. I brought her favorite snacks, string cheese and apple slices with peanut butter, when Cyrus and I had movie nights at his place. I never once tried to replace her mother. I just tried to be present, steady, someone she could maybe learn to count on. It took 6 months before she smiled at me. 6 whole months. It took a full year before she'd let me braid her hair. By the time Cyrus and I actually got married, Marin was 8 years old. She was my flower girl, wearing this white dress with a pink sash, scattering rose petals down the aisle with the most serious, concentrated look on her face, like it was the most important job in the world. At the reception, she fell asleep in my lap, with her head all heady against my shoulder, and Cyrus snapped a photo. I still have that picture framed on my nightstand because it was the moment everything changed. That was the night I officially became her stepmother. But here's the thing. I didn't feel like a step anything. I felt like I'd been handed this incredible gift I never knew I wanted. A daughter.
So let's talk about Odette, Marin's biological mother. The woman who lived out in California, living her best life, while her daughter wondered what she'd done wrong. Odette called exactly once a year, on Marin's birthday, and sent a card with a $20 bill tucked inside. No letter, no, "Hey, how you doing?" No explanation for anything, just cash, like that could somehow replace actually showing up. And Marin would clutch that card for days afterward, staring at Odette's loopy handwriting like it held some secret code. Asking me questions I had absolutely no good answers for. "Why doesn't she want me?" she'd whisper. "What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong," I'd tell her every single time, pulling her close. Sometimes adults make really terrible choices that had nothing to do with their children. Your mom has her own stuff going on, but that doesn't mean you're not lovable. Marin would nod like she believed me, but I could see the doubt sitting there in her eyes. She didn't diet. How could she? The woman who literally gave birth to her couldn't even be bothered to pick up the phone. Odette bailed when Marin was 3. Cyrus told me the whole story one night after we'd put Marin to bed, and honestly, it was rough. Odette had been completely overwhelmed by motherhood, postpartum depression that nobody caught or treated. She felt trapped. So one random morning, she packed a suitcase, left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I can't do this anymore, take care of our daughter," and just left. Cyrus came home from work to find Marin sitting on the floor in front of the TV, all alone, eating cereal straight out of the box with her little hands. He tried everything to fix it, called Odette every single day for a month, She never answered, not once. He even hired a private investigator because he thought maybe something bad had happened to her. Nope. She just moved to San Diego and started a whole new life. No forwarding address, no contact info, just gone. Like her daughter never existed. Cyrus got a lawyer, got full custody, raised Marin by himself for 3 years before I came along. And in all that time, Odette sent exactly 1 birthday card per year. That was it. That was the entire relationship. I hated her for it. God, I hated her. Hated her for abandoning a little girl who deserved so much better. Hated her for making Marin feel like she wasn't worthy of being loved. But I never said any of that out loud. Never badmouthed Odette in front of Marin because I knew that would only make things worse for her. So instead, I just showed up. I was there for every scrape knee, every nightmare, every school play where she had 2 lines and forgot both of them. I was there when Odette wasn't. And slowly, so slowly, Marin stopped asking about her, stopped waiting for the phone to ring, started calling me Mom. Marin was 11. We were in the kitchen making chocolate chip cookies because that's what you do when you're trying to bond with a kid who's been through trauma, apparently. Flour was everywhere. In her hair, on her nose, probably in places we'd find months later. She was laughing hysterically because I just accidentally dumped salt into the first batch instead of sugar. "You're terrible at this, Mom," she said. And then she just froze, went completely still. Her eyes got huge, and she slapped her hand over her mouth like she just said the worst curse word imaginable. I froze, too. My heart literally stopped beating. The wooden spoon in my hand was dripping cookie batter all over the counter, and I didn't even notice. "What did you call me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice soft and calm, even though inside I was freaking out. Marin's entire face turned bright red. She stared down at her flour-covered hands like they held the answers to the universe. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. It just slipped out." She actually thought I was mad, thought she'd crossed some line she wasn't supposed to cross. I set that spoon down, walked around the counter, knelt right there on the kitchen floor in front of her, so we were eye to eye. "Say it again," I told her. Marin's lower lip started trembling. "Mom," she whispered, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Then louder, "Mom!" I pulled her into my arms and just lost it. Cried right into her hair while she stood there, smelling like vanilla extract and sugar. "You can call me that anytime you want. I would be honored." After that day, Mom just became normal, natural. She'd introduced me to her friends as her mom, started making me Mother's Day cards at school with glitter and glue and way too much enthusiasm. When people asked about her family, she'd say, "My mom and dad." Not stepmom, just mom. And every single time she said it, my heart would do this stupid little flit. Because I understood what it cost her to trust me like that, to let me in, to risk loving someone who might leave like everyone else had. But I never left. Stayed through all the middle school drama, and Lord, was there drama. Stayed through high school heartbreak when some boy broke up with her via text message. Stayed through college applications and panic attacks at 2 a.m. Stayed when she got her first job and moved into her first apartment. I stayed because that's what real mothers do. They don't bail when things get hard. They stay. And when Marin got engaged to this genuinely kind man named Elliot, I cried tears of pure joy because I got to watch her build a life. I got to be part of her story. I got to be her mom. Marin and Elliot got engaged in the spring. He proposed on some hiking trail overlooking the Columbia River Gorge, got down on a knee in the actual mud, and she said yes before he could even finish his whole speech. They showed up at our house that same night, practically glowing, showed us the ring. Simple, beautiful, small diamond on a gold band. Cyrus shook Elliot's hand with that dad handshake that's equal parts welcome to the family and I will destroy you if you hurt my daughter. I hugged them both so hard I probably cracked a rib. We want to get married next fall, Marin announced, bouncing on her toes with excitement. October, at the Sentinel Hotel downtown. I've always dreamed of getting married there. She whipped out her phone and started showing me photos of this ballroom that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Gold chandeliers hanging from impossibly high ceilings. Marble floors so shiny you could see your reflection. Floor-to-ceiling windows. It was absolutely stunning. It was also, and I knew this immediately, way out of our price range. Cyrus and I did that thing married couples do where you just look at each other and have an entire conversation with your eyes. We'd saved some money over the years, specifically for this day. But the Sentinel Hotel? That was a whole different level. Marin saw our faces fall and her smile dimmed like someone had turned out a dial. "It's okay," she said quickly, putting her phone away. "We can do something way smaller. Maybe a backyard wedding or a park. I don't need anything fancy." But I could hear the disappointment crackling in her voice, could see how hard she was trying to pretend it didn't matter. That night after they left, Cyrus and I sat at the kitchen table with our laptops and bank statements spread out everywhere, looking at our finances like they might magically change if we stared hard enough. We had retirement savings. Not a ton, but enough to live on eventually. We had the house paid off. We had enough. Enough to give Marin the wedding she wanted, if we were willing to sacrifice. "It'll set us back a few years," Cyrus said, running his hair through his hair. "But she's our daughter. She deserves this." I nodded because I felt exactly the same way. Marin had already sacrificed so much in her life, had already been let down by so many people. I wanted to give her this one perfect day. We called Marin the next morning before I could chicken out. "We'll pay for the wedding," I said as soon as she picked up. Long silence on the other end. Then she burst into tears, the good kind. "Are you sure?" she asked between sobs. "I don't want you guys to go into debt. I don't want you to—" "We're sure," I interrupted her. "Let us do this for you, okay? Let us give you the wedding you've always wanted." Marin was full-on sobbing now. "Thank you. Thank you, Mom." The Sentinel Hotel cost $45,000. Let me say that again. $45,000. And that was just for the venue, catering, flowers, DJ, and photographer. That didn't include the dress, the invitations, the rehearsal dinner, the 100 other things that apparently cost money at weddings. By the time we added everything up on a spreadsheet that made me want to throw my laptop out the window, the total came to $62,000. It was more money than I'd ever spent on anything in my entire life, including my car and our first house down payment combined. Cyrus picked up extra shifts at work like his life depended on it. He managed a warehouse and his boss offered him overtime, so he worked 60-hour weeks for 6 straight months. I barely saw him. He'd leave before the sun came up and get home after dark, would eat dinner standing at the kitchen counter, still in his work boots, too tired to even sit down. Fell asleep on the couch more nights than I could count. "I'm doing this for Marin,"
he'd say whenever I begged him to slow down, to take a break. I'm doing this for our girl. I started picking up freelance graphic design projects on the side, would work until 2, 3 in the morning, editing logos and designing websites for small businesses who needed cheap work. My eyes felt like someone was rubbing sandpaper on them. My back screamed from sitting hunched over my desk for hours. But every time I thought about quitting, I'd remember Marin's face when she tried on her wedding dress for the first time. The way she twirled in front of that mirror, the way she cried and said, "I feel like a princess." That memory kept me going. We dipped into our retirement savings, cashed out a small investment account we'd been building for years, cut back on absolutely everything else in our lives. No eating out, not even fast food, no vacations, no new clothes. I wore the same 3 work outfits on rotation until they were practically falling apart. Cyrus drove a car with a broken heater through an entire winter. We didn't complain to Marin, didn't tell her how hard it actually was, because this wasn't about us. This was about giving our daughter something perfect. 6 months before the wedding, I sat down one night and did the math on how long it would take us to rebuild our savings. 15 years. I'd be 55 years old by the time we recovered financially. Cyrus would be almost 60. We'd have to delay retirement, keep working way longer than we'd planned. But when I pulled up that photo of Marin in her dress, smiling so wide it looked like her face might crack in half, I knew deep in my gut it was worth it. Love always costs something, and this particular cost felt like an honor to pay.
2 months before the wedding, Odette called. And because the universe has a sixth sense of humor, I was the one who answered the phone. Marin was at work. "Who is this?" Odette asked, her voice sharp and impatient like I was interrupting something important. "This is Delphine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Marin's stepmother." Long, awkward silence. Then Odette laughed, this cold, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. Her stepmother, right. "I heard you're paying for the wedding." "We are," I said carefully, my heart starting to pound because I'd never actually spoken to this woman before. Cyrus had always handled the rare phone calls. "That's generous of you," Odette said, but her tone made it crystal clear she didn't mean it as a compliment. More like an accusation. "Tell Marin I called. I'd like to be invited to the wedding." Then she hung up before I could even respond. Just click, gone. When Marin got home from work, I told her about the call, watched all the color drain from her face. She sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at her hands like they might have answers. "What do I do?" she asked, and her voice was shaking. "I don't want her there. She's not my mother. She gave up that right when she walked out. But what if people judge me? What if they think I'm cruel for not inviting my own mother?" She actually used air quotes around "own mother." "This is your wedding," I said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You don't owe anyone an invitation, not even her." Marin looked up at me with tears pooling in her eyes. "She's going to make a scene, isn't she? She's going to show up anyway and ruin everything." I squeezed her hand. "Not if we don't let her. You can hire security if you need to. You can make it clear she's not welcome. This day is about you. And Elliot. Nobody else gets to take that away from you." Marin decided not to invite Odette, sent her this polite but firm email explaining that it was a small, intimate ceremony for close family and friends only. Odette responded with the most vicious, hateful message calling Marin ungrateful and selfish and a bunch of other things I won't repeat here. Marin cried for over an hour after reading it. I just held her and let her rage and grieve because that's all I could do. She doesn't get to do this to you anymore. She doesn't get to hurt you anymore. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Some wounds just don't heal completely. 3 weeks before the wedding, we went to Marin's final dress fitting.
The shop was tucked into this quiet little street in downtown Portland, one of those places that looks tiny from the outside but somehow has this magical interior. The seamstress, this woman named Leela, who was about 4'10" and had more energy than anyone I'd ever met, had been working on Marin's dress for months. She'd added these delicate lace appliques to the sleeves, taken in the waist 3 separate times, hemmed the train to the absolute perfect length. When Marin stepped out of that dressing room, I actually gasped out loud. She looked like a vision, like something out of a dream. The dress hugged her curves in all the right places and then flowed out into this soft, romantic skirt that moved when she walked. The lace caught the light from the shop windows. Her hair was swept up in this loose bun with a few curls framing her face. She looked so grown up, so beautiful, so much like that little girl I used to braid hair for, and also nothing like her at all. "What do you think, Mom?" she asked, doing a slow turn in front of the 3-way mirror. I couldn't speak, literally could not form words. Tears just started streaming down my face like someone had turned on a faucet. Leela appeared with a box of tissues and this knowing smile on her face, like she'd seen this exact reaction 1,000 times before. "She's stunning," Leela said. Marin's eyes filled up with tears, too. "Don't cry," she said, laughing through her own tears. "You're going to make me cry and ruin my makeup trial." But it was way too late for that. We were both sobbing messes. Leela snapped photos of us hugging in front of that mirror, 2 women crying in a bridal shop on a random Tuesday afternoon. It was absolutely perfect. On the drive home, Marin got quiet, just stared out the window at the rain-slicked streets, because, of course, it was raining. This is Portland. She said, "I wish I could go back in time and tell little me that everything was going to be okay, that I'd find a mom who actually loved me, that I'd get married in a beautiful dress, that I'd be happy." She turned to look at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "Thank you for making that possible." I told her, "You made it possible. You were brave enough to let me in. You were brave enough to trust me after everything you'd been through. That took real courage, Marin." She reached over and squeezed my hand so tight. "I love you, Mom." Those 3 words felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, like every sacrifice Cyrus and I had made was leading to exactly this moment, like everything painful in both our lives had somehow brought us here, together, whole. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding, and we held it at this small Italian restaurant in Northeast Portland that Marin had loved since she was a kid. The back room was warm and intimate, with candles flickering on every table and string lights crisscrossing the ceiling like little stars. Marin and Elliot sat at the head of the table looking so happy, they were practically radiating light. Their friends and family packed the room with laughter and stories, and that specific kind of energy that comes before something big is about to happen. Elliot's father gave the first toast, talked about the first time Elliot brought Marin home to meet them, how he knew immediately she was special, how he'd never seen his son so happy, so settled, so ready for the rest of his life. Cyrus went next, and his voice cracked right away when he started talking about the day I walked into their lives. "My daughter won the lottery," he said, looking right at me, "when Delphine decided to love us. She gave Marin something I couldn't give her alone. A mother's love, the real kind, the kind that stays." Then Marin stood up. She wasn't supposed to give a toast yet. That was saved for tomorrow's reception, but apparently she couldn't help herself. "I need to say something," she announced, and the whole room went quiet. "Tomorrow's going to be insane. There'll be 100 people there, and everything will be chaotic and perfect. But tonight, right now, I want to thank the people who actually made tomorrow possible." She looked at Cyrus first. "Dad, Thank you for never giving up on me, for showing me what a good man looks like, for setting an impossible standard that Elliot somehow managed to meet." Then she turned to me, and I felt my breath catch. "Mom, I don't even know where to start with you. You didn't have to love me. You chose me. You chose me every single day, even when I was bratty and difficult, pushing you away as hard as I could. You stayed. You showed up. You paid for this wedding, even though I know it cost you absolutely everything you had." Her voice cracked, and she had to stop for a second. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to be half the woman you are." I was crying again. Shocking, I know. So was Cyrus. So were at least half the people in that room. Marin came over and wrapped her arms around me. She whispered right into my ear where only I could hear, "I love you more than you'll ever know." I held her as tight as I could and thought about all the years that led here, all the bedtime stories and school pickups and late night talks about boys and friends and life. Every single moment had been worth it for this, all of it. The morning of the wedding was absolute chaos in the best way possible. Hair and makeup started at 7 in the morning, which is way too early for anyone to be functional, honestly. Marn's bridesmaids filled the hotel suite with nervous energy and champagne that nobody was really drinking because it was 7 in the morning. I helped Marn into her dress, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button those tiny pearl buttons down her back. She looked radiant and terrified and excited all at the exact same time. "I'm getting married," she said, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. "I'm actually getting married today." I stood behind her and caught her eyes in the mirror. "You're going to be an amazing wife," I told her. "Elliot is so incredibly lucky." She spun around and hugged me, careful not to mess up either of our hair. "I'm the lucky one. I have you." The photographer was taking photos of everything, including that moment. And I'm so glad because I want to remember it forever. Mother and daughter, stepmother and stepdaughter. The labels didn't matter anymore. We were just family. Downstairs, the ballroom had been completely transformed overnight. White roses everywhere on tables, hanging from the ceiling, lining the aisle, gold candles flickering in glass holders, these sheer white curtains draped from the high ceilings that made everything look soft and dreamy. It legitimately looked like something out of a fairy tale. Guests started arriving, and I played hostess, greeting people at the door, making sure everyone found their seats, helping the wedding coordinator with 17 different last-minute crises. Cyrus found me in the hallway, looking frazzled, and took my hand. He said, "Thank you, simply, for all of this. For her." The ceremony started right at 4. Marn walked down that aisle on Cyrus's arm, and she was absolutely glowing. Elliot saw her and just lost it, started crying immediately. So did I. So did pretty much everyone there, if we're being honest. The officiant gave this beautiful speech about love and commitment and choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Marn and Elliot exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Marn promised to love Elliot through every season, and Elliot promised to make her laugh every single day for the rest of their lives. They kissed, everyone cheered and clapped. It was perfect. The reception was everything we'd hoped for. Dinner got served without any disasters. The DJ actually played good music for once. Marn and Elliot did their first dance to this acoustic version of At Last, and I cried through the whole thing. Then Cyrus danced with Marn for the father-daughter dance, and I watched from my seat, tears streaming down my face yet again because apparently that's just what I do at weddings. I had cried more in the past 24 hours than I had in the previous year combined. But they were happy tears, grateful tears, the kind of tears that mean everything's right in the world. After dinner, it was time for speeches. Elliot's best man went first and told these hilarious stories about Elliot in college that had everyone cracking up. Then one of Marin's bridesmaids went and talked about meeting Marin in high school and knowing immediately they'd be best friends forever. It was sweet and heartfelt and made everyone go, "Aw." Then it was Marin's turn. And honestly, I wasn't expecting anything because brides don't usually give speeches at their own weddings. She stood up slowly, looking nervous as hell, gripped that microphone like it was the only thing keeping her standing. I know this isn't traditional, she started, and I could hear her voice shaking. The bride doesn't normally give a speech, but I have some people I really need to thank. She looked around the room at Elliot's family, at her friends, at all the vendors who'd made the day happen. Thank you all so much for being here, for celebrating with us, for making this day so unbelievably special. She went through her list. Thanked the bridesmaids for dealing with her stress. Thanked Elliot's parents for raising such an amazing man. Thanked the florist, the photographer, the DJ. She was just checking boxes, going through the motions, and I was smiling and clapping along with everyone else. But I felt this weird tightness starting in my chest. She hadn't mentioned me, hadn't mentioned Cyrus. And look, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't do any of this for recognition or gratitude, but it stung. I'm not going to lie to you. It hurt. After everything we had sacrificed, after draining our entire savings account, after the 60-hour work weeks and the sleepless nights and the 15 years it would take to recover financially, after 14 years of showing up every single day, of loving her, of being her mother in every way that actually mattered. She couldn't spare one single word of thanks. Cyrus must have felt the same way because he squeezed my hand under the table so hard it almost hurt. His jaw was tight. We didn't look at each other. Then Marin paused, set down her note cards. Her hands started shaking visibly. When she looked up, there were tears streaming down her face. "There's one more person," she said, and her voice completely shattered. The entire room went dead silent. Every single eye turned toward our table. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I had no idea what was coming. I just knew something massive was about to happen, and I wasn't ready for it.
Delphine, Marin said, and that microphone picked up every tremor, every breath, every emotion. She looked directly at me. "You are my real mother." The words just hung there in the air, like they had physical weight. 5 simple words, but they carried 14 years of history. Every sacrifice, every doubt, every moment I'd wondered if I was enough, if I was doing it right, if Marin would ever see me as anything more than just her father's wife who happened to live in their house. The room absolutely exploded. Gasps echoed off those high ceilings, so loud it sounded like wind. Someone definitely dropped a fork. I heard it clatter onto a plate. Whispers started flying everywhere. People who didn't know our whole story looked confused, shocked, trying to piece together what was happening. Some of them probably thought Marin's real mother was sitting somewhere else, that I was just the stepmother, the second choice, the woman who married into the family. But Marin was setting the straight right now, in front of everyone. She stepped down from that stage. Her wedding dress trailed behind her like a river of white silk and lace. She walked straight toward me, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except sit there frozen, staring at her through tears that were already blurring my vision. She knelt right beside my chair in that expensive dress, took both my hands in hers, and they were cold, trembling. She said, crying openly now, "You raised me. You loved me when literally no one else would. You paid for this wedding. You paid for my college. You showed up to every single game, every recital, every broken heart. Mom left. You stayed." That word, stayed, cracked something wide open inside my chest because, yeah, it was true. I had stayed. Through tantrums and teenage rebellion and slammed doors, through sleepless nights worrying about her, through moments when she'd screamed at me that I wasn't her real mother and never would be. I'd stayed because that's what love actually does. It doesn't run when things get hard. It stays. I pulled her into my arms and honestly didn't care that crumpled up against my lavender gown, and I didn't care about that either. She smelled like roses and hairspray, and somehow, still like that little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. I love you, I whispered into her hair. I have always loved you, from the very first day. She sobbed against my shoulder. I know, Mom. I know. 200 people were watching us, some crying, some smiling, some clapping, but I didn't see any of them. I only saw Marin, my daughter, my girl. When we finally pulled apart, and it took a while, Marin wiped her eyes and actually laughed. She said, I've completely ruined my makeup. Her mascara was smudged everywhere. Her nose was bright red. Her eyes were puffy. She looked absolutely beautiful. I laughed too, wiping my own face with a napkin someone handed me. A makeup artist materialized out of nowhere with tissues and powder and makeup wipes. She fixed us both up while the entire room buzzed with conversation and emotion. People started coming over to our table, hugging me, telling me I was wonderful, that I was an amazing mother, that they were so moved. Elliot's mother hugged me the longest and hardest. You raised an incredible woman, she said, her own eyes wet with tears. My son is so lucky to have found her. I thanked her, but I was still in complete shock, still trying to process what had just happened, still feeling like I might wake up any second and realize this was all a dream. Marin went back up to the stage to finish her speech. She thanked Elliot for loving her. She thanked God for bringing them together. She said some other beautiful things, but everyone knew the real moment had already passed. Those 5 words had already changed everything. The rest of the night became this beautiful blur. More dancing, more laughter, more joy than I thought a single day could possibly hold. Marin and I danced together to A Song for Mama by Boys Into Men. It was a last-minute addition to the playlist that she'd requested right after her speech. We swayed together in the middle of that dance floor while Cyrus stood on the side watching and crying like a baby. This is the best day of my entire life, Marin whispered to me. Mine too, I whispered back. Mine too. At the very end of the night, after most guests had left and the staff was starting to clean up, Marin found me in the hallway. She was still in her wedding dress, but barefoot now, carrying her white heels in one hand. She said, I need to tell you something. I've been planning that speech for literal months. I kept trying to find the perfect way to tell you what you mean to me, the perfect words, the perfect moment, and then I realized there was no perfect way. There were just those 5 words. You are my real mother. That was it. That was the whole truth. She took my hand and held it tight. I know what you and Dad sacrificed for this wedding. I know you drained your entire retirement savings. I know you worked yourselves to complete exhaustion. I know you gave up years of your future for one day of mine, and I will never, ever be able to repay you for that. But I want you to know that I see it. I see everything you've done for me since the day you walked into our lives, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor that sacrifice, trying to make you proud. I was crying again. Of course I was. I told her, you already make me so proud. 3 days after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. I recognized the return address immediately, San Diego. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. I knew exactly who it was from, Odette. I literally stood there in my kitchen holding that envelope, debating whether to throw it away without opening it. But curiosity won out. It always does. I sat down at the kitchen table and carefully tore it open with shaking hands. The letter was short, handwritten,
The handwriting was shaky and uneven, like she'd written it while crying or with hands that couldn't stay steady. Delphine, it started. No Dear Delphine or anything formal, just my name. I saw the video of Marin's speech. Someone I don't even know posted it online and it went viral. I've watched it at least 50 times now. I saw the way she looked at you. I heard every word she said. You are my real mother. And I realized she's absolutely right. You are. I gave birth to her, but I didn't raise her. I ran away when things got hard because I was scared and selfish and completely broken. I abandoned my own daughter. You stepped in and picked up all the pieces I left scattered everywhere. You loved her when I couldn't, when I wouldn't. You gave her stability and security and a mother's love. You are everything I should have been, everything I wanted to be, everything I completely failed to be. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I'm not asking for it. But I want you to know that I'm grateful, so grateful that Marin had you, that she didn't grow up without a mother like I thought she would, that you gave her what I couldn't. You saved her life. You saved Cyrus's life. You're a hero, and I'm sorry for everything, for all of it. The letter was signed simply Odette. No sincerely or best wishes or anything like that. Just her name. I sat there staring at it for probably 20 minutes, feeling this weird mix of anger and pity and something like closure. Odette would never be part of Marin's life. That ship had sailed years ago and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. She'd made her choice 14 years earlier. But maybe in some small way, she was finally taking responsibility, finally acknowledging what she'd done and what she'd lost. Maybe this letter was her way of letting go, of admitting that Marin had found exactly what she needed without her. 6 months after the wedding, Marin called me in tears. I answered the phone already panicking because what else do you do when your daughter calls crying? Mom, I have something to tell you, she said between sobs. My heart literally stopped. I thought something was terribly wrong. What is it? I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. Are you okay? Is Elliot okay? She laughed through her tears, that specific sound that means they're happy tears, not sad ones. I'm pregnant. I screamed, like full-on screamed, so loud that Cyrus came running into the room thinking someone was dying or the house was on fire. What happened? He demanded, looking around wildly. I just pointed at the phone, unable to form words. Marin's pregnant, I finally managed to yell. Then he screamed too. We were both just standing there screaming like maniacs while Marin laughed on the other end of the phone. We were going to be grandparents, actual grandparents. Marin gave birth to a baby girl the following summer on one of those perfect July days where the sun is shining, but it's not too hot and everything feels possible. They named her Delphine Grace, after me. When the nurse placed that tiny, perfect baby in my arms for the very first time, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This little human with Marin's green eyes and Elliot's dark hair and the tiniest fingers I'd ever seen. My granddaughter, my legacy. Living, breathing proof that love can break cycles, that choosing to stay matters more than anything, that families aren't just born, they're built. Piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. Marin recovered from childbirth way faster than I expected. She was a natural mother right from the start, patient and gentle, but also fierce when she needed to be. She called me literally every single day with questions. How do I get her to sleep longer than 45 minutes? Is this rash normal? Why won't she stop crying? Did I break her? I answered every question, drawing on 14 years of experience raising her. I showed up at her house with homemade meals and diapers and words of encouragement. I held baby Delphine while Marin took actual showers. I rocked her to sleep so Marin could nap. I did for Marin exactly what I'd always done. I stayed. I showed up. I was there. One afternoon, a few weeks after the birth, I was sitting in Marin's living room holding baby Delphine while she slept against my chest. That specific baby weight that feels like the most important thing in the entire universe. Marin came and sat down beside me, watching her daughter sleep. I used to spend so much time wondering what my life would have been like if Odette had stayed. I'd lie awake at night imagining this alternate reality where she didn't leave, where I had my real mother. She reached out and gently touched Delphine's tiny hand. But now I realize I got something so much better. I got you. And because of you, I know exactly how to be the mother I want to be. I know what real love looks like. I understand what sacrifice means. I know what it means to show up every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You taught me all of that. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. We're a family of criers, apparently. I want Delphine to grow up knowing her grandma Delphine, really knowing her, knowing the woman who saved her mother's life, who taught me what family actually means, who showed me that the people who choose to love you are just as real, maybe more real than the people who are supposed to love you by default. I kissed the top of baby Delphine's head. She smelled like baby powder and milk and new beginnings and hope. She'll know, I promised. I'll make absolutely sure she knows. And in that moment, sitting in my daughter's living room, holding my granddaughter while afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, I finally understood this was why I stayed. This was the real gift, not recognition or gratitude or even those 5 words that changed everything at the wedding. The gift was this exact moment, this life we built together, this love that would echo through generations. Baby Delphine would grow up with a mother who knew how to love because she'd been loved, who knew how to stay because someone had stayed for her, who understood that family isn't about biology. It's about choice and commitment and showing up even when it's hard. This was worth everything. Every dollar we'd spent, every sacrifice we'd made, every moment of doubt, every tear, every sleepless night, every time I'd wondered if I was doing it right, if I was enough, if any of it mattered. It all mattered. It all led here, to this living room, this baby, this family that shows each other over and over again. Cyrus came over that evening after work. He looked tired but happy. He'd finally been able to cut back on the overtime now that the wedding was paid off. He kissed Marin on the forehead, then came over and looked down at baby Delphine in my arms. "She looks just like Marin did," he said softly. Same expression, same little nose. He sat down beside me and put his arm around me. "We did good," he said. "Look at what we built."
And he was right. We did do good. Against all odds, despite all the obstacles, through all the pain and sacrifice and hard choices, we built something beautiful. We built a family, not through biology or legal paperwork or any traditional definition. We built it through choice, through staying, through love that refused to quit even when it would have been easier to walk away. Marin's phone buzzed. She looked at it and smiled. "The video of my speech just hit 2 million views," she said. "People from all over the world are commenting, telling their own stories about step-parents who became real parents, about people who chose to stay." She looked at me. "You've inspired so many people, Mom. They're calling you a hero." But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like a mother. Like someone who had been given an unexpected gift, a scared 6-year-old girl with paint on her cheeks, and decided to love her. That was it. That was the whole story. There was no grand plan, no heroic intention, just a choice made over and over again, day after day, year after year. The choice to stay, the choice to love, the choice to show up. Baby Delphine stirred in my arms, making those little baby noises that sound like tiny birds.
Her eyes fluttered open, so green, so clear, so full of possibility. She looked up at me with that unfocused baby gaze, and something passed between us, some understanding that transcended words. I was her grandmother, her history, her proof that love doesn't quit. "Hi, sweet girl," I whispered. "I'm your Grandma Delphine, and I'm going to tell you stories, so many stories, about your mama and how brave she was, about your grandpa and how hard he worked, about what it means to choose love even when it's scary, about staying even when it's hard. You're going to grow up knowing that family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you on purpose every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Marin was crying again. Cyrus was getting misty-eyed too. We were a mess, all of us, sitting in that living room as the sun set outside and painted everything golden. But we were a mess together. A family built on choice and sacrifice and stubborn, relentless love. Later that night, after Cyrus and I had driven home and I was getting ready for bed, I looked at that photo on my nightstand. 8-year-old Marin asleep in my lap at our wedding reception. I picked it up and really looked at her peaceful face, at my hand in her curly hair, at the beginning of everything. Then I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos from today. Me holding baby Delphine, 3 generations. The scared little girl grew up and had a baby of her own. The cycle didn't just break, it transformed into something beautiful, something that would continue forward generation after generation, carrying the lesson that love is a choice and family is built by people who refuse to leave. I climbed into bed next to Cyrus, who was already half asleep. "You know what?" I said into the darkness. "I'd do it all again. Every sacrifice, every hard day, every dollar spent, I'd do it all exactly the same." He reached over and took my hand. "Me too," he mumbled. "Best $62,000 we ever spent." I laughed softly, because he was right. It was the best money we ever spent, the best choice we ever made, the best life we could have possibly built. And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Marin's speech, those 5 words that had changed everything. "You are my real mother." But the truth was even simpler than that. She was my real daughter. From the moment I decided to stay, she was mine and I was hers. Biology had nothing to do with it. Legal documents had nothing to do with it. It was just 2 broken people who found each other and decided to build something whole together. That's what family is. Not the people you're born to, the people who choose you, the people who stay, the people who love you on purpose every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And that right there is worth everything.